Hello and welcome to the Wilder Lincolnshire podcast from the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. I'm Melvin Pryor and he's Matthew Capper. Hello Matthew.
How are we doing, Melvin?
Very well. We're at Woodall Spa Airfield. Didn't know what we were going to find here, but already we've heard lots of birds singing, lots of wildlife around. It's great, isn't it?
It's actually quite a chilly day, but there's no real wind. The sun has broken through a couple of times. We've had a couple of showers, but despite all of that, it's been really good. Yeah, we've had my first singing chiff chaff of the year, which was really nice. Brilliant. That was good.
Yellowhammer I've seen flying around, and we heard a green woodpecker.
Yes, so a really distinctive call called a yaffle, green woodpecker. The call is called a yaffle. So if you remember, did you watch Bagpuss when you were?
I did, yes.
So it was Professor Yaffle, which was named after the call of a green woodpecker. So there you go.
They're not the ones that would tap into a tree then?
Well, they do drum to proclaim territory, but green woodpeckers actually normally feed on the ground. So they'll be feeding on things like ants. So they have a long, sort of fairly sticky tongue, and they'll be picking up ants with their tongues.
Now, something, again, that we don't often talk about with regards to wildlife, there are cows calving here as well.
Yeah, it's been lovely, hasn't it? So five newborns, and I think there's about 10 still to come. And they are so cute and fluffy, aren't they, these little calves? I'm
calling this the grazing centre for the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust because this is where you keep the cattle before they go out and help graze on the reserves. Is that right?
Yeah, they're an absolutely vital part of the management tools that we have. And having this as a sort of a central hub, as a base for our grazing operations, means that we can work with our wardens who are out on their sites. They know what their sites need, and we can get the right grazing at the right times of year, the right amount of cattle in the right places from our operation here. It's great.
And does it create a different sort of habitat and environment? I'm thinking of the cattle grazing, but then there's the droppings going onto the land as well. Does that create a different atmosphere?
Yes, it's all part of a natural system, really. So far better to use cows than heavy machinery, and they do such a good job of managing the sites for us. Grazing is really good. It helps to make sure that scrub doesn't encroach. The hooves will create little gaps in the turf so that other flowers can come in, and they're really helpful for sort of flower meadows and hay meadows. So we get them on after we've taken the hay cuts. So they're an absolutely vital part for some of our wetland reserves, our heathland reserves, our grassland reserves. They all need cows and grazing.
Well, we'll talk more about the cows a little bit later on in the podcast, but first of all, we caught up with Warden Kevin to tell us a bit more about the area. So, Kevin, we're out and about in your back garden, and what a back garden to have.
It's absolutely wonderful, really super place.
It's lovely, but where are we?
We're in the centre of Kirkby-on-Bane, just outside of Woodall Spa, and we are in the cluster of nature reserves called Woodall Spa Airfield.
Quite a significant area here, both from its historical background, but also from a nature point of view as well.
It's a really very rare habitat that we're standing on here. It was part of the Cover Sands heathlands, which was a huge inland heathland. Much of it is gone now, but we've got some huge fragments left here at Kirkby Moor Farm, and in around the surrounding area. There's also the huge significance of the military past. We manage 500 acres of RAF Woodall Spa, which was home to 5 squadrons, including 617. So after all the dam raids, they were stationed at Woodall.
And do we still see any of that sort of history when we go around the sites as well?
We've got 2 objectives with managing these clusters of reserves. One is to manage it as a nature reserve in the most sustainable way, but to preserve as much of the military past history as we can find. So we've still got the original runways, we've still got some of the buildings there, we've still got a lot of the infrastructure, some of the machinery is still there, and we try to conserve as much of it as we can.
And is that a challenge in itself, working the two together?
It's not a challenge in itself. They almost complement one another. The nature reserves are managed in a sustainable way using our livestock. The military buildings, we've got a huge body of volunteers who are keen to help, and they pile in and help with a lot of the practical physical management.
How long have you been involved then with the trust working in the area?
Well, I'm the new boy with the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. I've only been here for 18 years.
But what a place to be. Now, are the different nature reserves sort of different in what they offer in terms of species and habitat?
There's a huge selection of habitats in a relatively small area. We're only talking maybe about 1,000 acres. And in that area, you've got some of the best wetland heathlands in Lincolnshire. You've also got some fine examples of dry heathland, some wet woodland. There's a whole variety of woodlands. And the airfield itself, we've got lots of open concrete areas, which some people may think is quite a bit dull, but these dry, arid areas produce a whole variety of these succulent plants, these plants that need a stressful, dry environment to survive, like biting stonecrop and various other plants like that.
I can hear birds in the background. This is a fabulous spot to be, and you've spotted some wildlife already this morning, haven't you?
Yeah, I came out this morning and had a walk around, and I was so blessed. In front of me, I could hear a woodlark singing, which is a Schedule 1 rare bird, and I walked behind the house, and we've got adders on the footpath running behind the house.
Now, that's interesting, because you've brought something up there that we need to be very aware of, something like the adder, that we don't disturb them too much.
In the last 70 years, the population of adders has had a catastrophic decline, primarily through habitat fragmentation, through inappropriate management. Also, the largest concern that we have is disturbance at critical times of the year. 90% of the adder population is going to be extinct from the UK in the next 15 years. Wow. So we've got to hold on to what we've got. And this disturbance is the critical thing. When they emerge from hibernation, they lie out, and it takes 2 weeks for them to shed their skin before they go. They're really vulnerable at this point. So it may be tempting to come and get that great photograph at that point, but we really need to leave them alone, because if we disturb them, they move and then they come back again. But this constant moving backwards and forwards, they're slowly starving to death because they're relying on their food supply from the previous year, their fat reserves. They're using that up, and we're slowly causing them to starve to death. So please stay away from adders at that time of the year.
And what sort of environment do they like? I mean, we don't want to encourage people to go looking for them. I can't think that many people would want to go and find a snake, to be honest with you.
Adders are usually so elusive. They're secretive and elusive. And in the summer, they'll just be gone. You won't ever see one, or you might see a tail going off. But this sort of heathland environment is exactly what they want. They need dry, open areas to lie out and bask in the sun for this critical period before they shed their first skin and they go off. So you can find them. They can be just lying on the sides of the footpath sometimes because they're looking for that open area. So you could find them potentially anywhere.
The other thing we want to talk about is grazing on some of the sites, and I'm going to take a look at one of the sort of the grazing centres, I suppose we can call it, for the Wildlife Trust. Do you use grazing on the sites that you manage?
Grazing is the most essential tool for managing our reserves. They're our environmental engineers. I couldn't physically manage all the reserves that I'm responsible for with just tractors and things like that. It's not good for the environment, it's expensive, and we're championing the Rare Breed Survival Trust in the fact that we're using Lincoln Red cattle. Now, we've got a farmyard up on the airfield, and we use these Lincoln Reds to graze around all our reserves, opening the habitat, keeping the grass short, making this, we always talk about this mosaic. What we want is a mosaic of habitats, and cattle and sheep particularly, they will do that just by their action of grazing.
And what is the advantage of using cattle, using animals to graze?
Well, as I say, when I couldn't physically, it would be far too expensive to use machinery. One, it's quite a sad day when you find out that Lincoln Red cattle that used to be all over Lincolnshire are now on the endangered species list. And we are championing that by keeping the breed going. And it's just a very effective way to manage our reserves. And it also, some of these animals will go into the food chain. So they're pedigree animals, and they will go into the food chain and they will generate money that can go back into managing our reserves.
That's Kevin, the warden in the area here. We're talking about Kirkby Moor, we're talking about Woodhall Spa Airfield. And Matthew, fascinating area there because he's actually right in the woodland setting, isn't he?
He has the best location for a house that you could possibly wish for. I'm so jealous. Every time I visit this area and see where Kevin lives, I just go green. It's wonderful.
He mentioned also grazing. We're going to talk a bit more about that and the importance of it in a little while. But while we were there chatting with Kevin, I heard a skylark. You heard a different lark, didn't you?
Yes, we had a woodlark singing away in the background, and skylark is a fairly iconic sort of songster that people really relate to. You know, it kind of is evocative of walks in the countryside and farmland. Woodlark is very much a heathland specialist. They love the sort of the close, short turf areas. I think they have a better song than skylark. It's a really kind of musical noise, and like skylarks, they'll sing on the wing. Because if you think about it, a bird that lives in an area where there are very few trees, you want your song to carry as far as it can.
Yeah.
So by actually flying up and singing as you fly, that proclaims your song right across your territory in the absence of a tree to sing from.
So if you're looking for a lark, it'll be singing on its way up,
Yes.
and then it stops singing as it floats down. Is that basically what it's doing?
They
Or is it
tend-
still doing a bit of singing on the way down as well?
Yes.
Is
yes.
it? Okay.
Yeah. And meadow pipits, they will do something similar. So they will fly up, and as they come down, they parachute down, and they do their song as they come down. So
Wow.
yeah.
We did stop in at Kirkby Moor to have a quick look round there, and that was a wonderful heathland area, wasn't it? First time I'd been for a look round, very different environment.
I love that reserve. It is one of the largest and last remnants of what was an extensive heath area in this part of the world. And it's only through the Trust having bought the land and spent decades buying bits of land and creating this sort of landscape of nature reserves in this area that we still have that heathland left.
Well, back at Woodall Spa Airfield, I caught up with Cicely to find out a bit more about the cattle and the grazing projects. So, Cicely, we've arrived at grazing headquarters for the Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. So, where are we?
We're at Woodall Spa Airfield, a nature reserve, and we're standing by the cattle sheds at the moment.
So, okay, cattle here, a particular breed of cattle?
Yes, so they're original population Lincoln Reds. They're the breed that has grazed Lincolnshire for centuries. They're really hardy, a docile breed, smaller than commercial breeds, but they can be outwintered. They can thrive off a diet which is natural. They don't need any concentrates or different food. They're very happy to graze our nature reserves, and they do a good job doing that.
The lovely thing is, I've come at the right time because it's calving time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had 5 calves so far, and we're still expecting 10, hopefully over the next month or so.
How many cattle have you got here at the moment, and what's the ambition?
So we've got 15 calving cows at the moment this year, and we hope to have about 30 in the future.
Wow, okay. So let's talk a bit more about what you do with the cattle that you've got here. Do they just stay on the site here, or do they go around the county?
So our breeding cattle stay here. We've got a bull, and so the cows go out on Woodall Spa Airfield over the spring, summer and autumn, coming just in while they calve. Our steers go over to Snipedales to graze, and our heifers, the young girls, they go over to Moor Farm to graze there.
Now, you've got this passion for looking after cattle that comes from having your own cattle. Tell me a bit about the background to that. How did it start?
So I started off working in commercial dairy, milking about 500 cows and calving them, and witnessing maybe how I would not like animals to be looked after, and seeing a farming system which kind of opposes the natural environment. And I just thought this could be done better in a way which the animals can benefit and our environment can benefit too. So I ended up getting some cows of my own, some rare breed shorthorns, and grazing nature reserves with them. And so it's a real passion of mine, and it's wonderful that I get to do it every day for my job.
And you've still got some of your own cows as well, haven't you?
Yes, so they graze another wildlife trust site called Wisby Nature Park near Lincoln, and also Frampton Marsh RSPB.
Now, you actually live on site, so how long have you been doing that and what's it like?
So I've been here 2 years and it's incredible to wake up every day on a nature reserve. The amount of wildlife I can see from my window is wonderful, and the sights and sounds, it's definitely not human sounds, it's lots of birds, animals. It's incredible.
Now, no mooing at the moment, which is very disappointing. All I can hear is eating going on in the background, because the cows that we're beside at the moment, most of these have actually produced calves now, haven't they?
Yes, absolutely. I'm always surprised by how crunchy hay seems to be. But they're eating the hay which we've made on our own hay fields here. Yep.
Now, what about the importance of grazing? What are the advantages then of putting cattle out on some of the sites to graze?
So obviously cows have created, or herbivores have created, our natural landscape. They have been here for thousands of years, grazing. They can help control the encroaching scrub. They make a nice diverse sward. They naturally fertilise the soil, and they're obviously causing a lot less disturbance than when we go in with big pieces of machinery, compacting the soil and creating a habitat which is all very similar. We've created a lot of diversity within the structure of our fields because our cows are the ones that manage it.
And Lincoln Red, they seem ideal. Well, obviously for Lincolnshire, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. They're very hardy. They can just do the job on their own. They don't cause as much compaction to the soil because they are smaller, and they would ideally love to be out all the time. If it wasn't as wet, they would be.
What about the practicalities of getting them to and from the other centres?
Because our cows are so docile, it's a lot easier than it would be with some wilder cows. And we've got a really great handling system here, which enables us to get the cows loaded into the trailer nice and easily. And they'll happily come, if we shake a bucket of nuts, they'll happily come running, and we can get them back here when they need to be coming back.
Cicely, who looks after the Lincoln Red cattle here at Woodall Spa Airfield. And it's lovely the fact that the cattle from here then go out to the various reserves across the county.
Yes, it means we can target the conservation work where we need it at the right times, at the right amounts as well. So the facilities here are absolutely brilliant, and it just facilitates that whole operation. I have to say, great to be able to talk to Cicely. Just what an amazing person she is, how passionate she is.
She absolutely loves it. That's why she's got her own cattle and sheep as well, but really passionate about what she does. Also, we talked a bit about the grazing side of things. And as Kevin was also mentioning, it means, this is going on. It doesn't need human intervention. The cattle are there grazing. They're doing the job that they need to do.
Far better to have natural solutions to mechanical ones. Far better, all the way.
And I think that's part of the key, and it creates this special environment. But the other thing here is you've got wildlife and nature alongside the history of the past, because this is a very special place, isn't it?
It is. I love coming here because, it's a fantastic place to see wildlife, and that's my main passion in life. But it's also a really poignant place. You go back to the Second World War, and this was an active RAF airbase. There were 4 squadrons flying bombers out of here, heading over to Germany on dangerous missions. So many people took off from here and didn't come back. And it also has those strong links with the 617 squadron. So if people know of the Dam Busters raid, that was the squadron that undertook that mission. And after the raid, they were moved here and spent the rest of the war flying out of Woodall Spa.
Another well-known name associated with the Dam Busters raid is Guy Gibson, and he did actually fly from here, but not on a bombing mission.
No, so he was flying Mosquitoes, Pathfinder flights. And actually, this was the place where he took off from on his very final mission when, sadly, he was shot down and killed.
Where we're sitting at the moment is actually where they used to do the maintenance work on the aircraft before they then taxied across to the main runways. So it is a fascinating area, but it's quite still here sometimes as well, isn't it?
Yeah, as you say, you really get that sense of history that lies very, very kind of heavily over this place, I think.
Yeah, very much. Now look, We've had a great look round here. The nice thing about the podcast is that we're going out to different places. Hopefully you're enjoying listening to the podcast. What should we do next time?
Well, I think spring will definitely be well on the way by the time we record the next episode. So it feels probably only right that we go and get some sort of dawn chorus experience, maybe.
Hang on, dawn chorus. That sounds very early to me.
It definitely needs an alarm clock setting, I think, that one, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, I might have to get a new alarm clock for that particular recording. Hopefully you've enjoyed the latest Wilder Lincolnshire podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Wilder Lincolnshire podcast from Lincolnshire Wildlife Trust. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a follow or subscribe from the usual channels, and please tell your friends and family to give us a listen too.